Welcome back. I'm talking the Egyptian women empowerment strategy in Egypt and Egypt's women towards full inclusivity and gender equality. And we're honored to have with us Mrs. Simone Salem, gender advisor to the UNAIDS. And Mrs. Simone, while talking about the future is always female, by the way,
yes,
as they say it this way, with inclusivity and also with your baby, namely gender,
yes,
gender issues and gender equality goals, especially post the COVID-19. How is the story different, in your opinion?
I think first I want to say something regarding the Emirates.
Sure.
You know why the
Yes.
Emirates, they are, how would you say, jumping ahead of many of the Arab countries because of their also way they looked at gender. If you've seen the gender equality, it's been spoken about in the UAE since ages. We have not been doing that, but they have been ahead of us. And even the education level has been very high among female Emirates. So I think also this just sheds a little bit of light of how far you can go when you put how do you call it, emphasis on your women and female population. So back to your question about COVID. I think COVID was a very good, let's call the silver lining for Egypt. Because for many countries, and I've been working with humanitarian plans for countries that were facing issues with COVID, I saw Egypt was taking that opportunity to highlight their Egyptian, the female partner. So they had this emergency plan to look after the Egyptian woman. They had, and it had so many targets and so many achievements. Just to name a few, you know how they put all their efforts, whether economically, to give economic empowerment to women who have not been able to, get good financial support during COVID, the lockdown. In healthcare, there have been opportunities for women to get access to services. Even when it comes to the Prime Minister, I think he had a decree saying that women who are pregnant or who had children less than 12 should not be going to their offices. You know, so many things which, and Egypt was commended for this actually achievement, and I think they had won some recognition by the World Bank on such a thing. So COVID was for the world to see Egypt doing things differently and making an effect.
Yeah, definitely, yes. And we've been investing in women, and under the leadership of President Sisi, we have seen new blood Egyptian women in the parliament, and also Egyptian women ambassadors, as governors, as ministers, in all specialities of life. So, as they say, when you invest in women, you're investing in the future.
For sure. I mean, 25% women in the parliament, this is really an achievement, not for Egypt and for the Arab world. And I think it's also related to lots of things. It's how we see the culture is changing around us. Women, you said the future is female. If you give women a chance to take jobs as men, you would have revenues of like triple what we are making right now at a national level. So I think this has been clearly understood by President El-Sisi, and this is why he is trying to put all his effort and commitment to push the Egyptian women forward with 8 critical ministers in critical positions in the cabinet. This is really, and they have been doing amazing work. It's not like they are just in their places. No, each one of them, if you follow them, you will find very proactive, going out of their own portfolios and working with different stuff. Minister of International Cooperation working on gender equality. I mean, this is it's all over the place. So each one of them is, I think, is looking at gender equality as her second mission beside her portfolio that she's holding at the cabinet. And this, I think, is quite obvious to everybody who's seeing their work.
Yes, talking about gender equality and the steps that has been taken on behalf of the country throughout the march, and that, as you've mentioned, has been praised today by world institutions.
Yes, yes. You know, equality, the thing is gender equality, once you understand it, it's really the basis of all the Sustainable Development Goals. If you want to achieve the 17 goals, you will have to have gender equality. And when a barrier is there, it is the gender inequality. It's really something people are now realizing. So you'll find most of the organizations, the international organizations, for example, UNAIDS, where I work, we are doing now our new strategy, and gender equality is coming really, really on top of everything, the Equality Forum. You look at all the countries, all of the work that is happening in development. So it's really fundamental. If you want to work on poverty, if you want to work on education, if you want to work on even reaching the health systems, which is goal number 3, if you want to eliminate all inequalities in general, you will need to work on this particular gender issue. I think Egypt has been very, very lucky because we have a very strong president who understands that, and it was very obvious from the beginning. He pushed. We have the National Council, which is
for women, yes.
For women. And to me, the National Council plays like an observatory role. You know how they call it, like they are the accountability mechanism. So they push and they work, but they also stand back and say, let's see what difference we are making in the lives of women. So it's not just talk, talk, talk. No, we are really doing stuff, and we are also being held accountable for it. So we're very, very lucky with that as well.
Definitely, and as you've said, we have many important goals concerning the strategy of women empowerment vis-a-vis through the National Council for Women. Egyptian Women 2030, what are we aspiring, in your opinion?
I think we'll be aspiring to be everywhere. If the future is female, I think it will be in all aspects of life. It's not going to be standing. You won't have a job that you would say a gender norm. This is for women. This is for men. It's not going to exist. You know, with the electronic space, with the technology that we are moving into, with the everything,
with the smart cities that Egypt has, and with being turning into a logistic and communication hub, definitely it's going to make a difference.
Of course, and you know what's also very important, Taghreed, is the norms. The gender norms are changing as well. If you ask
in what way are they
if you ask someone in the street in 2014, if you ask him, you will have a female judge. A'udhu billah, what a female judge? She won't be able to judge, and she won't be able to say something.
The mindset has changed.
The mindset has changed. Now they are accepting. Now they are even promoting, and you will find people who are saying, no, I'd rather have a woman director rather than a man director, because they believe that it's women can do anything. The stereotyping has gone. The gender norms have changed. What works for women is not anymore a language we use. We say what works for human beings. If you have a good mind, if you have a good knowledge, if you have good education, information, access to everything around you, you have the same equitable possibilities and prospects. So Egyptian women 2030 are going to be just normal human beings in a community where everybody is treated the same. This is my vision, and I hope
we are going to be everywhere. I like that.
Yes.
Being everywhere. Yeah. Well, the media also, and drama and soft power definitely play a very important role in changing the stereotypes that has been before, and more initiatives also undertaken in that regard. Let's follow up this report on women empowerment strategy in Egypt, and we'll be back to continue our discussion.
National Council for Women, Dr. Maya Morsi, delivered a speech during the opening of the 63rd session of the UN Commission on the Status of Women, which took place at the United Nations headquarters. The annual 2-week session of the Commission brought together representatives of the United Nations, the UN member states, as well as organizations and advocates from around the world to discuss the status of women. In her presentation, Morsi talked in detail about Egypt's strategy towards women empowerment, which included 6 main axes: women's empowerment and the link to sustainable development, financing gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls, women's leadership and their full and equal participation in decision-making, strengthening gender-responsive data collection, follow-up and review processes, enhancing national institutional arrangements and good practices. Legal-wise, Egypt's 2014 constitution enhanced the legal framework for women as for the first time 20 articles dedicated to addressing women's issues regarding ensuring equal opportunities for women, transfer the nationality to their children, allocating a quarter of the seats of local councils for women, social, economic and political rights, social security services, preventing discrimination, protection against all forms of violence, women's empowerment, commitment to care at various stages of their lives, and commitment to the International Conventions on Human Rights, which all include the rights for women. Setting strategies, women always had the priority, as nearly up to 5 governmental strategies were announced during the past years for women empowerment, including Egypt's Vision 2030, National Strategy for the Empowerment of Egyptian Women 2030, National Strategy to Combat Violence Against Women, National Strategy to Combat Female Genital Mutilation, and the National Strategy to Combat Child Marriage. 2017 was decided to be named the Women's Year as recognition for what they did for their country, and the President honored a huge number of women who were described as social fighters. In March 2017, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi announced and endorsed the National Strategy for the Empowerment of Egyptian Women to be the national policy and guiding document for the government. Among the efforts done for women empowerment was dedicating amounts from the national budget for childcare services and for supporting female breadwinners and poor families. A total of 38 million women were announced by the government to benefit from bread and flour subsidies. 34 million women benefited from food ration cards. 10 million women benefited from health care support. 8 million benefited women from family and reproductive health services. 2.1 million women benefited from the SME's loans. And finally, 89% of women were benefiting from social protection programs, according to Morsi's presentation. Egypt's government has recently taken concrete strategic steps to enhance the financial inclusion for women, such as presidential decree that has been issued in February 2017 to establish a National Council for Payments, with the President of the Republic being the head of the council. Also celebrating the first ever year 2017 of women in Egypt and activating the economic empowerment pillar in the National Women's Strategy 2030, the National Council for Women signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the Central Bank of Egypt, which places Egypt as the first country to have its CBE sign an agreement with a national women machinery worldwide. Egypt is the first Arab country and the second globally to develop a certification program for government and private sector based on the success of the Gender Equality Seal. The seal provides Egyptian companies guidance on how to address challenges for women, such as access to work, wage inequities, sexual harassment, work-life balance, and access to leadership positions. Nearly private sector companies have undergone a thorough process of assessment. Morsi said in a statement that an assessment team consisting of gender experts from the UNDP and the National Council for Women has worked on assessing MSMEDA based on 6 major criteria. In the political life, now there are 8 women leading the ministries of health, culture, environment, investment and international cooperation, social solidarity, immigration, trade and industry, and planning. In terms of numbers, female representation in parliament has currently improved, and Egyptian women have achieved an unprecedented percentage of representation.
A lot has actually been done. Egypt was the first country to provide the women-specific response during COVID-19, launched by the National Council for Women, and scored first place in the Middle East and West Asia regions with 21 policy measures according to the UNDP COVID-19 Global Gender Response Tracker. Well, those readings definitely give us special significance.
Of course. Like I said, COVID had hit so many countries by surprise. You see, everybody was like, even big countries, we've seen how they have been running around really helpless with health infrastructure falling out and falling about them, and really no clue what will happen with them, let alone seeking to support women. You know, you were looking out for the whole communities, for your whole population. Egypt I don't know how we did that, honestly, but they had been, as if we planned it, as if it was foreseen for some reason. The infrastructure was there. Even the 21 policies that have been happening with the COVID, they were laid because you had already the thing in
The
place.
foundation.
The foundation was there. You had the access to the rural women, you had access to schools, you had access to private sector, you had access to support, to health facilities. And it went perfectly fine also because I think we were not hit by, how do you call it, panic. The country did not panic. So everything was done in a very much calculated and laid out plan. And right now, I think it's still continuing because COVID hasn't finished. It's still unfinished business. Despite the vaccines and everything, I think the resilience plan will be continuing. We'll have to go on until maybe for another year with whatever will happen. And Egypt has also proven that it's ready for such a plan and such a phase. So yeah, I completely agree with that, and I congratulate Egypt for taking and I see even in the portfolio I work in HIV, Egypt has done amazing. The Ministry of Health has been amazing in providing ARVs, multi-monthly dispensing for people who are not able to access
at a time when the whole world was looking only at COVID,
exactly,
at the COVID story, but still we managed to make successes
of course in
other files.
They did not drop any other file, as we've seen, so it's something that we really have to be proud of.
Yes, we're really proud of that achievement. Another ministry that we're really proud of is the Ministry of International Cooperation, led by Mr. Rani Al-Mashad, together with the World Economic Forum, the National Council for Women. It launched the Closing the Gender Gap Accelerator, the first of its kind, actually, public-private collaboration model in Africa and the region and North Africa that aims mainly to help the governments and the businesses to take decisive actions in order to close the economic gender gap. A lot of work has been done, and in a recent speech also by the minister, this has been outlined.
Yes, and she said, if I remember, it's not a lip service. She's really meaning that, and it's action more than just plans. Economic empowerment and closing the gender gap in general is major, and to have an accelerator on it is something that it means that they are putting commitment, country commitment, private sector commitment, particularly on the economic gap. And we all know that the economic gap is really the beginning of lots of things, because if you give women economic empowerment, you are really helping her you save her from gender-based violence, you save her from dropout of schools and lack of education, you give her more room to grow with, like we said in the beginning, with the technology around us. There are massive opportunities for women now, even from their homes, they can do plenty of work. So I think that accelerator has been amazing, and I think it was linked to work she has already also supported in terms of education and supporting the schools that have been coming out to prove gender equality, the science, technology, education, and mathematics.
Yes.
New schools, they call them STEM. I think it's also something that has come hand in hand. So you just lay the ground. You start with that, and then these women, once they grow out of school, they will find opportunities to get jobs and just take off. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Well, Egypt has also been taking steps in order to create safe spaces for women to work, and this is quite interesting.
I'm happy you mentioned that, because one of the things that we always face in the UN, and also when we try to put a strategy in place and we tell ourselves, okay, now this is what we plan to do, how we are going to be doing it, how we guarantee that it will be successful, and just telling me that they looked at the safety of women and the safe spaces for women, it makes me feel that they know what they are doing and that this is really a very, very sound plan. The problem is at the level of the ministry and at the level of the government, of the governor, or even at a much less, but what we call middle class or middle level management, you could have the commitment. But as you go down in the ladder of work, you will find people are pushing back. And this is where no safe space might not be available. So you find a woman is being harassed maybe at her work, maybe abuse of authority, maybe belittling her work, stuff like this. Even in the streets, if you want to go out and work, you need to make sure that you can access transportation with no harassment. And I think looking at these safe spaces and making sure they are safe is something that we need to acknowledge and be happy that they have looked into it.
It happened.
And it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Because you're changing with that, you have the mechanisms in place to make sure that these places are safe, but you also have to have policies in place. So if you have harassment in this office, then this measure will be taken and people will be punished. If there is no repercussions, retaliation might happen, and it will be worse for the woman to say that she's been, uncomfortable in her zone of work.
Yeah.
So it's this kind of mechanism of reporting and acknowledging and taking action is quite important.
Yes, we do have also other hits, like in 2020, Egypt won 2 sustainability awards granted by the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development for its development in sustainable energy and also in gender and inclusion. One award for gender and inclusion. One of those awards went also to the Egyptian National Railways, mainly for contributing to providing safe transport for women's economic inclusion and also providing access to education. And education and culture, very important, changing the culture.
Yes, yes. What we've been saying, you told me, how do you see women 2030? I see women 2030 starting from now. If you want to change a culture, you have to work from today. You have to work with the young generation. You have to work with changing the mindset of people. How you see the woman, how you see what she can do and what they think she cannot do. Because like we said, she's everywhere and she will do anything. I think education as well, inclusive education, is very important. People to see diversity. The problem is that we always look at women as one category, but women, they are diverse. You have so many layers of these women who are marginalized, women who are accessing services, women who are not able to access services, women who are able to get good education, women who may not be able to get good education, but they may have other attributes that will help them to grow or have their own worth somewhere else. So I think the inclusiveness, the diversity, and to be taking an award in that is something that is completely impressive.
Yes.
Yeah, for Egypt.
How can we make the education more encompassing inclusivity and also encouraging the girls and the women to be leading in other fields that we need them more hands-on, like, for instance, the field of scientific research, also like the field of technology?
It's exactly what has been happening. If you open schools to males and females and you make sure there is gender parity, so if I'm taking in this technology institute, for example, as many young men as I'm taking young women, then I will make sure that they are, you have them coming out as people who would work in this field. The problem is, for some time, we have not been thinking of the gender parity in the education system. And right now, I think it's something that we need to look into. If 1,000 are applying to the medical school, then we need to make sure there is gender parity. If in engineering, gender parity. And with the whole inclusiveness in the education system, making sure that not just men and women, there are people with disabilities, there are people with diversity. All of these people need to be coming in, because your system is not just, it's human beings end of the day. And if you look at people, regardless of whether they are males, females, whether they are poor or rich, or whether they are able or disabled, I think it's important that we have that mindset. And this is where we are going bit by bit. And this is where the culture needs to change.
Definitely. Yeah. And we have undertaken great steps in that regard.
Yes.
Mrs. Simone Salem, gender advisor at the UNAID AIDS program at the United Nations, I thank you so much. Always adding value through your insight and reading a headline, which is really very important if we're talking about our developmental goals 2030. Yes. Thank you, Simone.
You're welcome, Tahrid. I'm very happy and honored to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you, my dear. Honor and pleasure is mine. And that was the Daily Debate, Thursday debate on ILTV International. And I'm Tahrid Hussein, thanking you all for watching.